There we go. I hope you've been enjoying the music. Again, the soundtrack is something that you get sent if you buy the digital version, or why not get the book version and they ship you the digital stuff with it. Thank you, Zulo. The cooldowns for the commands should be in that panel that go over the different adventures. Just remember that there are two different timers for the commands. There's a global cooldown and a personal cooldown, depending on whoever's trying to invoke the command. All right, so we're going over magic in particular after a quick recap of things. And so far, I mean, everything still seems to be simple and straightforward. These are options that you can specialize into as a caster. You do not have to embrace any of these arcane or divine traditions, but if you do, there are paths to take that also have not just mechanical benefits, but role-playing ones as well. If you're sitting here and you're like, do I have to memorize all of this? No, you do not. Just like you are not expected to memorize all of the spells in the Player's Handbook of D&D. I haven't, and how long have I been playing? A long time. Not as long as maybe some of you out there, but long enough. So I'm going over it because maybe you pick up on something. Something makes you go, oh, whoa? What's this? And it is a delightful... It is a delightful extension of a concept that you had. But otherwise, if you go, well, okay, I get it, I'll just kind of keep you on in the background, that's cool too. Maybe you want to play more of the physical bruiser type anyway. Santero says, today I'm excited because I'm starting to create a new campaign based on Monster Hunter. Oh, very good. I mean, that formula works very well. You go out, you're the big game hunter, or kind of like if not Monster Hunter, you've some similar things with Shadow of the Colossus and the like. So Santero, thank you for being here again. You're welcome to talk about your ideas. I'd love to hear them as we continue to look over. Crown and Skull. The Crown and Skull role-playing system here. Now, if you are playing along at home out there, you can download the player's guide for free. I'll provide the link in chat here, and you can take a look at what's going on. With that, you can scroll through. Now we're getting into the GM section, which I don't think is in the player's guide. So now we're going into territory from the official PDF that I got by supporting the creator in the system here. But we went to the character generator, and as you can see, I am a human with drawn serious features. Okay, cool. What's our strength score? What? How many hit points do we have? Huh? What's our encumbrance? What are you talking about? Aren't we playing D&D? No, we're playing Crown and Skull. These are excellent descriptors to get you into your character. Your equipment and your skills are a part of your character's physicality, as well as a measure of your endurance in battle through the attrition system. Now, we're going to explore that more, I have to imagine, here in the GM section. I have not peeked ahead. All of this is a first look, a blind read-through of the system and how we're following along. I do like the thematics. I can see how it can be easily adapted. If you don't like the setting for some reason, the maps, the descriptions, or some of the jokes are kind of corny, then don't have it. Be a super super serious, dark, edgy, setting of your own. Take the ideas and move them on in your own way. As with any RPG, you're welcome to do that. If you like it and you want to lean into it, and you're a fan of the puns and you're a fan of a lot of this other stuff, then cool. Stick with it. Go hard into it, because there's a lot of other resources that you can find for this system and game. All right. Anyway, let's get back to the GM's guide, part of our exploration of Crown and Skull. There is fluff and lore in here. It's fine. I'm not skipping over it because I am uninterested. I simply want to get into the mechanics. But this does help immerse you into the themes and tones of Crown and Skull. 1,000 assumptions. As an author speaking directly to the game master, there are countless assumptions that must be made. The game master is a unique brand of hobbyist, researcher, host, game designer, lore expert, furniture connoisseur, snack keeper, architect, storyteller, sinister foe, music curator, miniature collector, terrain builder, and much more. For the sake of the section to follow, it is assumed that the reader has a working knowledge of numerous RPG systems, common terminology, the basic flow of a roleplay session, a knack for combat encounters, an eye for fairness, player celebration, and maintenance of table energy. With those assumptions all out in the open, let's zoom in on the task at hand. To game master Crown and Skull with elegance, style, and excitement. I do, Daily, and I'm sorry if I'm ripping your heart out by not narrating it. I love them as well personally, but I want to make sure I'm getting into the meat of Crown and Skull. By the way, Santero, for your project, what you're saying, study various environments and biomes in our real life, how creatures have adapted and grown to them and in them, and take those concepts and adapt them to your fantasy system. That way it doesn't feel jarring or unnatural for a monster to be in the location it is. As far as how the game works, build a character, which is very simple. Your hit points are your gear and skills. As you fight, your gear might break, or you might lose access to your skills because you're getting knocked around, or you can't repair armor because you took a nasty hit to your arm or something like that. You can get them back through magic or over time, and all parts of your character grow with your character. That's a super reduced version of the attrition system. But maybe Daily can help answer questions in chat for specific questions. And you might pick up Santero with the Game Master section of this book. All right. Assuming all the above, there are 3 areas to bolster in your repertoire as a Crown and Skull GM. A feel for the rolls. Tumble some dice alone in your lair. Roll some d20 unders and some damage rolls. Account for enemy armor, get a feel for attrition. Test how certain skills feel with various penalties for difficulty. Sure, your mind can understand all this a priori, but feeling these values will give you an intuitive ability to tune difficulty, assign announce rolls, or create enemies on the fly. Tactics dice? Yeah, master those too. Crown and Skull has an extremely deep point-buy creation system that can become a truly infinite rabbit hole for the dedicated player. As GM, you'll need a fluid command of these systems, their outcomes, creating spells and gear with ease, and making rulings on player-created concepts, costs, and session rewards. Crown and Skull keeps its rule listings brief on things like flaws, spells, equipment, distance, time, and the like. Again, players will have questions. Get used to filling in details of game mechanics, estimating distances, inventing skills and enemies, finding help in the text, or answering whether frogmen eat potatoes for breakfast. You've got this. It's one thing to establish a working knowledge and applied instinct for an RPG system like Crown and Skull, but it's another to master that system. This step takes comprehension from understanding to art form. You don't just know the game, you are its master. Everything on the previous page is of mechanical concern. Mastery, however, must include far more diverse and esoteric topics. Reading this book, feeling ideas spark, imagining dungeons, plotting wilderness encounters, devising enemy stats, sketching the dramatic conflicts of a few scenes, or visualizing epic revelations are all part of a GM's preparation for a session of play. The Master does all this, usually in 3 distinct scenes per session: the setup, the conflict, and the climax. Bring the danger fast and frenzied, do weird voices, and follow where the players take you. The masterful GM has historical, practical, tactical, and anecdotal knowledge of the hobby as a whole. During play, a great GM is both teacher and lunatic, both encyclopedia and jokester. Welcome your players, encourage and inform them, lift them up, and celebrate their unique insanity, with the deep knowledge to see them in a wider context of all that there is. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, a GM can seamlessly adapt to the unexpected without compromising the believability and consistency of the world and story at hand. A holistic understanding of the game's setting, the North holds, its people, places, and perils, will prepare the GM for these moments. Even more so, rock-solid improvisation is mastered with practice. What is the name of the fruit vendor in Bumblebird? Is there a penalty for using a sword while riding an orc warbeast? Is there a secret door around this grotto? Why did the dwarves abandon this part of the mine but not the other? Does the wagon have a handbrake? Are these horses accustomed to spellcasting? Do these runes on my robes say anything specific? The Master can answer all these, keep notes, and stay consistent. The first challenge all GMs face is the art of teaching a game, or even the hobby of role-playing entirely, to players old and new. Maybe Crown and Skull is a new system for your group, or you're playing with friends who've never played an RPG at all. Either way, your task is to make the first few sessions fast, fun, rewarding, and educational. Here are some tips. The cold open. Okay, guys, welcome to Crown and Skull. Thanks for joining the mayhem. This game uses a D20 for skills. There are no character stats or hit points, which is kind of crazy, and no attack rolls. Before you flip the table, and before we get into all that, let's choose a place to start. Get your players settled in, journal and pen in hand, maybe some blank character sheets, a cool map on the table, dice at the ready, guide them through choosing a hometown, visualizing fantasy themes they enjoy, and all the questions and ideas that unfold therein. Who in blazes are you? Great. So the stone-walled port of Rivergate is your home. You're all part of a mining guild, and times are tough. It's early winter at the base of the Stormkeepers. Let's get an idea for who these characters are. With their hometown chosen, your GM brain should be brimming with ideas for how to start the action. While those ingredients simmer, ask your players simple questions to get their characters to appear from the fog. Maybe they want to use the random prompts, or maybe have a clear idea already. Give them a quick tour of how character creation works, but don't get in the weeds just yet. Each character should have a name, a core concept, a few skills, and a few pieces of gear. For some tables, this opening session is entirely for character building. Other groups might finish characters as play begins. Have that equipment page bookmarked, answer as many questions as possible. When you feel the curiosity and energy of character creation starting to wane, it's time to throw some action at them. No better way to learn than fighting to survive. Let's do this. Yep, simple probing questions are a DM's greatest friend. With workable characters, our players are ready for a little trial by fire. A GM in this scene, your job is twofold. Or as GM in the scene, demonstrate the basics of combat and keep energy high at the table. The setup. A fire breaks out. It's a typical afternoon. All of you are walking down a Rivergate alleyway, hoping for cold ales and tall tales for the night. Suddenly, right in your path, a wooden door collapses into the street in a plume of smoke and embers. An old woman emerges in a panic. "The children are trapped! Help!" She collapses from the smoke and heat. No one else is around to help. What will you do? Kick in the music and for now bypass a few mechanics if need be. Just look to the first player on your left and say, "Kara, let's start with you. What will you do?" This moment, encouraging a player to just go for it, is how you earn your GM stripes. Just get the dice tumbling and the action hot. A conflict, a pesky flamekin. All of you have made progress to stop the flames, and the children are safely in the alleyway. A human-shaped mass of flames leaps forth, challenging all of you with aggressive bursts of heat. For the second part of your tutorial scene, have the players select their phase. Give your little flamekin in action in phases 2 and 4. Call for some defense rolls. Get heroes rolling damage. Maybe they even have ideas to hasten combat with a bucket of water. This little battle shouldn't take more than a few rounds, but the basics should all come up. The wrap-up, so it begins. That was a handful of the basic mechanics. Everybody feeling it? Wrap it up with a recap Q&A about how combat, attrition, and the like works. This little victory earns local attention, and things can really begin. What you'll do most as GM. As GM, you'll be stretching some new muscles running this game. When you're teaching the basics, you'll be learning yourself. Roll with it. Here are the things that happen so often you'll master in no time. Track the phase. Calling the current phase and what PCs or monsters are taking action is a constant. Phase 2, any actions? Oh wait, that's when my goblins go. Looks like 5 attacks incoming. Call for the defense roll. There are no GM attack rolls here. So when monsters and hazards do things, you just call for player defense. All 3 ogres swing their axes at you. Give me 3 defense rolls, Osric. Call for damage. Attacking? Roll damage. Players do not roll attack rolls, so reinforce this speedy mechanic, reminding them that low damage rolls serve as a missed swing in many cases. This goblin has 1 defense, so roll damage and subtract 1. What? You only rolled a 1? A miss. Inflict attrition. Enemies will be hitting our heroes, inflicting attrition. Most times, this means damaging a skill or item. Some enemy attacks will afflict multiple skills or items only. In extreme cases, items will be destroyed, not simply damaged. This beast uses a blunt hammer-like claw to attack, distracted by gleaming steel. Cross off one equipment. Negotiate rest, repair, and healing. Recovering crossed off skills and equipment will be heavy on players' minds, especially when they are not in a safe and restful place, which should be most of the time. Follow these guidelines when hearing player petitions for recovery. Additionally, brush up on these rules on page 12. Safety stickler. Be stingy with offering safety. Sure, they can rest, but without a threat-free environment, recovery is impossible. Replace equipment with hero points. Be conservative with shopping trips, looting corpses, and found loot. Usable gear is a premium in this world, so wave off most low-grade gear as worthless. And take a breather. Be merciful with this rule, as it offers minimal recovery but boosts morale. Santero, I have a question. What are the 3 strangest things that have happened to you as a DM? All right, so a question posed for all of you. What are 3 strange things that have happened to you all while you have been running a role-playing game? I've had a lot. I've had police come by. I've had a fight almost break out between friends. We've had those epic combats where you start before the sun sets and you're not ending until it's noon. Then in the afternoon the next day. You say, "Where did the time go?" That was amazing. What you'll do most as GM. Attack everyone. Yep, good times for the GM, terrifying for players. Use area attacks with your foes and hazards. Combined with the attrition system, these moments are wild. Spikes! Everyone roll evade! Call for D20 rolls. There will be many moments when it's unclear what to roll. Use D20 for opposed rolls, or use a flat target value of 6. Having a useful skill is always better than an improvised D20 roll, but be ready to devise, announce, and adjust on-the-fly rolls. You grapple the guard? Let's both roll D20. Lowest controls the struggle. Make it deadly. When a player attack adds another of its die due to circumstances, the attack is deadly. Deadly can be earned by player description and GM approval. Iron Bite is deadly as I fly downward from the ramparts. That makes 2d12. Yeah, sounds good. Roll it. Bring the heavy attack. Mix up enemies with the occasional huge one or nasty weapon. Treat this as attack 5, inflicting a -5 penalty to hero defense. Nickname it heavy as a useful shorthand. Also consider +1 attrition. Use enemy defense. When a player suffers a damage penalty due to enemy defenses between -1 and -10, remind players roll your damage at -3. These goblins are well armored. You can also use defense to make aimed shots harder. All the detail of a to-hit roll contained in the far simpler damage roll. Shooting for the eyes? Make that a -5 damage penalty. Call the difficulty or penalty. A reduction of hero skill -1 to -15 due to difficult circumstances. In the first few sessions, do not inflict penalties at all. -5 is a good go-to value for making a skill roll difficult. Climbing the wet rope? It's difficult. Okay, roll climber skill -5 to go up. Remind players that difficulty can be negated by roleplay, assistance, or other clever means. Roll for suspense. So many things during play have questions about how long, when, or how soon. Think in rounds, d4 usually, for simpler, slower things, and phases, usually 2d6, for more detailed events. Count it down on the table with dice everyone can see. The tension builds. You hear a rumbling beyond the door. Something is coming. Now, the attrition deep dive, the mechanics of the system. Santero, hopefully, these game master prompts have been telling you how this game is run. That it is a simpler and more elegant system than even 5e, in my opinion. One of the most daring aspects of Crown and Skull's rules system is attrition. Simple at its core, the system has a myriad of edge cases, possible exploits, and variations for use by foes. Consider the rules below as preparation for player questions and the creation of ever-varied enemies. The narrative. Repeatedly remind players of the narrative aspect of attrition when hit. Maybe an injury results in a lost oratory skill. Knocked out teeth, a bruised jaw, or a neck injury could explain difficulty with public speaking. A gauntlet is damaged. Lifting an arm to block a sword went awry and the glove straps were all cut. Junk inventory. Seeing this system, clever players may attempt to game the concept by padding their inventory with low-value skills or cheap items. Skills will cost them points, so no need to mitigate that strategy. As for inventory, use two methods to prevent this exploit. 1. All small items carried are in a single item called pouch. 2. Be very mindful of found inventory in play. Looted corpses, armories, and the like need to be somewhat stingy. Only relevant or interesting inventory should be acquirable. Other items ruined by time or combat. What gets crossed off? When a character suffers attrition, there are 3 ways to decide what is lost. Choose. The player chooses which item or skill to cross off. This is the most gentle kind of attrition. Or roll. Roll a die, cross off, or destroy the item or skill found on that line. See the Crown and Skull character sheet here. Players may get creative with how they write their inventory to game this type of attrition. It is fine. Backup inventory. Armored characters may choose to carry backup shields or helmets, since damaged armor degrades the defense roll. This is fine, but only one of a type can contribute to the defense total. Donning of replacement armor can be discussed case by case, usually plausible as a single action, unless a chest plate or other complex piece. As GM, you'll be employing the attrition system to add variety and fright to your enemy attacks and environmental damage doers. A mixture here will keep players on their toes. Damage versus destroy. Deploy an even mixture of attacks that damage equipment, i.e. it can be repaired, and attacks that destroy equipment, i.e. it's gone for good. Ah, Phantos! Thank you very much, Thantos. I sincerely appreciate you renewing your subscription. You and the others that have those H's by your name, you are very much heroes here. And I'm glad that you have confidence in who we are, what we do, and that your support does help go to a very good place. Deploy an even mixture of attacks that damage equipment, i.e. it can be repaired, and attacks that destroy equipment, i.e. it's gone for good. This is a light-heavy distinction in your attacks. Bleed, poison, corrosion, and burn. These occur when attacks deal attrition for a time after it hits. Bleed and poison will cause skill attrition. Corrosion is similar but destroys equipment. Burn inflicts attrition on skills and equipment, 1 each per round. These effects all last 1d4 rounds. Targeting. Some foes will aim for flesh rather than attacking generally. Others might target gear. Others might target a specific skill or item inventory to cripple a target. In these cases, offer the hero a bonus to their defense roll between 1 and 5. These archers are using acid arrows, aiming to destroy your weapons. Roll defense +3 when they fire. Multiple attrition. Extremely powerful foes may afflict 1d6 attrition. This is a terribly powerful attack, especially when combined with the effects above. The bite has swamp rot. Brutal. Cross off 1d6 inventory. Save versus death. When giant boulders fall or a dragon bathes an area in fire, you may ask for a life or death roll. If this roll is failed, heroes drop to a state of about to die instantly. The clever GM should see immediately that placing such attacks in Phase 5 makes a monster terribly deadly. Recovery spam. Given freedom from the time pressure of encounters, perhaps during travel scenes or brief town visits, players may seek to spam their healing and repair abilities for full recoveries. Crown and Skull does not allow this tactic. The rest and recovery rules on page 12 conglomerate all such attempts into an allowed rate of recovery in safety and rest, immutable by player actions. So the example, using your various repair and medical skills, you recover at the inn with a night's rest. Roll that d4. If you want a bunch of small knives in it, possibly. Now, if we wanted to count it for some reason, daily as the knives being very small, I mean, maybe they're just 1 damage. So armor, any kind of armor would negate the damage altogether. Or if you keep it like a D2, there's a chance that even a lightly armored target might take damage. But Santero, so something to consider would be, let's say you do have a bunch of small knives. If those are kept on a bandolier in a pouch, because if that equipment is destroyed or takes damage, you presumably would lose all of your knives. And in this system, you do purchase your gear with your experience points. They're called hero points in this system. So if you end up losing them because your knives were destroyed, or you threw them and they fell in the swamp and you can't find them again, would it be possible to do? Sure, I appreciate that creativity. And I think that question and my reply are in the spirit of this system. The danger to that creativity is if you're allowed to keep all those small knives in one spot, I can go for your bag of knives and take it out, and therefore all your knives are gone. With an enemy or a circumstance or something like that. So there is a give and a take to that. If you wanted to do something like that, you could with some negotiation with your GM. However, it's not the safe route to take all the time. Phases are about to be your new best friend. This simple method of dividing up playtime solves a lot of tabletop challenges all at once and gives you a clear method for building monsters and varied challenges. The simple method. If you're the type to keep things simple, just start every combat or dangerous encounter by announcing Phase 1, who has an action. Doing phases this way is so easy and clear, it barely warrants discussion. It's also handy if you're not sure how to use the deeper aspects of the phase method. Roll to kick it off. When an encounter or battle scene is about to explode, call for a roll. Players and GM all roll d20. Lowest roll wins. Plain and simple. If a player wins, combat begins on their phase. If you, the GM, win this roll, combat begins on your first enemy phase. Proceed from there as normal. This can skip early phase heroes in a bad luck situation. No matter which method you use to kick off dangerous scenes played in phases, one truth should jump off the page at your GM brain. Phases provide a detailed way to use timing and imminent events in play. Sure, it's easy to toss a d4 and say in 2 rounds the lava will smash the door in. This method is used in many RPGs. But to roll 2d6 and say in 9 phases the lava will smash the door in, the amount of playtime is similar, but the exact moment that lava smashes in will fall in a precise moment, likely disrupting player action sequences. This disruption is magical in play. Try these rolls to answer when will it happen. Whatever it may be, monsters arriving, poison gas flooding in, the floor giving way. If counting rounds, the timer runs out on the same phase it was rolled, that many rounds later. So things happening in a matter of seconds, common timer roll. Here's a guideline. You have to memorize it? No. Should you? It doesn't hurt if you can. And if not, like with any other RPG, crack open your book. Maybe there's a bookmark here to 126. Hi, Heretic. Heretic, I have something for you. In fact, I even forgot to show this off in the first part. In the first part of the the opener, right? Our untap, upkeep, draw. So this was the next step in the coloration of the prize goblin to the gothic the gothic set. She is now fully rendered. I promised a goth goblin in my go live notifications on Discord, and I do want to deliver. Here is the fully rendered version of the gothic prize goblin. So here's looking at you, Heretic. All right, now let's get back to Crown and Skull as we're listening to these heavy riffs. The perceptive GM will quickly notice that phase selection by players and the phases on which enemies take actions is more critical than it may appear at first. It may take players quite some time to refine their phase selection for different tactics. But as the GM, here are some key elements of that system to consider. Phase 1 is less awesome than it seems. Going first is often seen as a big advantage for damage-minded heroes. Leaping into action for that first kill is very effective against low-level enemies. but as things progress, the Phase 1 actor becomes more a target than a slayer or effective ambusher. Phase 1 aggression is still useful, though, for those characters hoping to distract enemy harm from others. Phase 4 is deadly, deadly, deadly. Taking that fatal heart hit in Phase 4 allows almost no time to rescue a character from near instant death. This is important to note for the GM, in that enemies that use this phase for their attacks and actions will be some of your most dangerous. Rescue capability is a key consideration. Building on the point above, clever players should quickly learn that a healer or fast-moving rescue character needs to be taking actions on Phase 5. This allows one last chance to save a dropped ally before the round ends. Since potions require no time and no roll to deliver a heal, they can be most effective in the hands of a fast-moving hero here. Phase 5 is also useful to buff or aid heroes before their next action. Knowledge of enemy phases is hugely useful. Learning about a monster's abilities and weaknesses is a big part of any TTRPG. When players know a foe's phases, though, they can set themselves up to outmaneuver the enemy with relative ease. Always move away in Phase 3, guys. It has that brutal Phase 4 cleave. To defeat such a foe, players might all designate themselves in Phase 3, with one rescue character in Phase 5. This gives them a chance to attack and hurry away, with a backdoor for any dropped heroes falling victim to the -5 defense penalty for hurry. As our intrepid heroes struggle to achieve their goals, enemy attacks aren't the only thing to fear. The environment and all its many hazards are just as deadly as an orcish spear. Afflicted thus, heroes may suffer from the status effects listed below, as GM employ to taste. Many attacks and effects will mention stun. If stunned, you are conscious but concussed, unable to act, barely able to stand. This state is escaped with a resist roll or when a rolled timer runs out. By the way, you've seen where resist and evade as skills have come up in this. You don't have to take those as skills at all in character creation, but you can see where in combat situations it does come up. Freezing. Deep cold will numb the fingers and slow the mind without furs or winter clothes. In deep cold, start freezing after 4 rounds. In this state, d20 rolls are -5 and enemies you attack gain +5 defense. If freezing for an entire day, your blood will go to ice, killing you slowly. Overheated. Extreme heat causes a heavy-limbed exhaustion. If exposed to extreme heat for 2 rounds or more, d20 rolls are -5 and enemies you attack gain +5 defense against you until you can cool off. Also, when overheated, you cannot use hurry in your phase. Afraid. Terrified by extreme horrors, you lose your wits, usually by failing a resist roll. When afraid, you are forced to use your phase to flee the source of your fear. Fear wears off with a rolled timer. Immobilized. Various forces like snares, muck, or tangling vines can halt movement. You can still make actions in this state, but cannot move. Escape is usually via a muscle roll. There's muscle, that third commonly rolled skill. Use a magic roll if held by magic. Burning. I'm on fire, guys! If ignited by fire attacks or effects, cross off 1 skill and 1 equipment each round you're on fire. Flames die off in 1d4 rounds. Bleed. Cross off 1 skill each round, bleeding 1d4 rounds or until bandaged. Corrosion. Destroy 1 equipment per round for 1d4 rounds. There is no known way to stop corrosion once it has begun. Creating believable, exciting environments is key to keeping heroes on their toes. All things being equal, if terrain is not imposing limits, players will have an easy time with their challenges. Thus, the skilled GM always looks for ways to involve the environment in dangerous scenes. This is usually accompanied or accomplished by linking terrain and status. Stunned. Anytime a hero takes a massive hit, such as a maximum roll on a brutal attrition, falling rocks, being hit by a wagon or horse, or falling to a hard landing, they are stunned for 1d4 rounds or until a resist roll is made. Stun may not be listed with every enemy or event, but it is a constant tool for the GM. Freezing. All cold effects, not just weather, can induce freezing. Cold magic and the breath attack of a frost lizard come to mind. Overheated. Any huge open fires or magma should be made powerful by having them impose extreme heat. Hot smoke could also induce this status. Afraid. Afeared even. Undead or horrific creatures should often cause this status, especially when first seen or encountered. Always offer a chance to resist this status, adding a penalty for extreme terror such as evil gods or an undead relative. Phobia or paranoia flaws may also be a factor. Whatever you do, don't look at it. Gods and devils, what is that thing? Immobilized. All kinds of terrain can immobilize heroes. Deep snow, mud, brambles, rubble, sticky tar, soft sand, or being held, grappled, or roped. Burning. Normal fires can be brushed past with no ignition, but any extreme, huge, or magma-made fires should have a 50-50 chance of igniting a clumsy hero. Dragonfire always ignites everything. Corrosion. Acid, rust, or specific types of venom can erode equipment, even if somewhat uncommon in terrain. Acidic drips are the most frequently encountered, often found on the ceilings of underground places. Trust the hexes. Long have hexes been employed by role players to divvy up their game worlds into crossable, discrete bits. This isn't a method to measure scale so much as divide themes over time. As play progresses, the GM may have notions of landmark events or threats, but the interim may be unexpected, roundabout, or all-out random, as decided by players. In this case, the hex can be utilized as a content-building engine, but only with your trust. If you flip forward to read about hex rolls in the Atlas section of this book, you'll see how 2d10 are used to devise a location and event when the unknown jumps into play. These cues are listed in brief and therefore rely on the GM and players to lend life and movement to the roll results. This lending of life is done by trusting the roll to the utmost. Trust may seem like a heady word for a die roll, but it is used with purpose. Trusting a hex roll means taking it without hesitation, concern, or that doesn't fit responses. Fully embrace the roll results. And we have that here. We have that in our channel with the It Writes Itself. It writes itself here in our channel. So fully embrace the role. This may take a few minutes to absorb during your session. Sometimes when our best friends are staring right at us, our creative muscles go rigid. Call for a bathroom break. Take 5, you guys. I need to get a few notes down here. Breathe. Let these crazy roll results sink in, and jot the first few ideas that come to mind. For many GMs, the disruptive, unpredictable effect of hex rolls is difficult to accept. For players, though, there is a strange delight in a world of real discovery. Rather than exploring your GM storyline, you are discovering together, all of you, at the table. There's simply no substitute for the fun of not knowing, even when it's nerve-wracking. We come back down here to our our NPC who's been giving us advice throughout the rulebook. Dramatic storylines that take ages to play out drive me nuts. Feel the gravitas, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Bah! Give me a wide open wilderness, no idea where we're going, and a few barrels of beer. Now that's adventure. What about the story? If players are just romping about, rolling hexes, adapting, looting the bodies, repeat, is that an adventure? Is that a story? Not really. Story needs purpose, revelation, an unfolding of things, and escalation. Once again, the GM is faced with a juxtaposition of elements and skills. The joy and freedom of hex rolls, but with the inevitable craving for robust story arcs that fulfill and celebrate all the exploits at hand. In the following pages, you'll find a collection of quests, adventures, challenges for our heroes to overcome. These serve to firmly ground you and your group in the events, creatures, and larger dangers of the North holds, but also to launch what will, with time and creativity, become your group's unique story. That's a big word for any role player, story. It isn't something the GM can plan or steer. It isn't something known at the beginning. It isn't fixed in its course, but doesn't entirely belong to the players. That said, it isn't random or aimless, or without meaning and revelation. It is all of these things. Good morning to you, Tony. Have a good night, Rip Artist. Thank you for hanging out. The story of a campaign is an emergent series of ever-escalating ideas and eloquent outcomes discovered session by session. This all-caps truth is both freeing to the GM and burdensome. On one hand, they are officially relieved of composing, writing, or conceiving of a linear story as is found in fiction. On the other, the exact path to what that story will become is unclear, obfuscated by player agency, hex rolls, unanticipated combat outcomes, character deaths, responses to NPCs, enemy factions, world events, and how many coffees Dave had on Tuesday night. It is unknowable. As the masterful GM, you will let this truth abide and play session by session with acumen, energy, wonder, and humor. In the fertile soil of calm and the confidence of good friends, the story will grow on its own. One of the most common challenges for the GM is deciding what any given monster would do when their phase comes up. The GM wants to be effective and tactical, but not cruel. What to do? In Crown and Skull, you will use an innovative method called tactic dice. Put simply, for each action a monster might take, a tactic die is rolled. Let's say phase 3 comes around, and my skeletal knight gets 2 actions that phase. I roll 2 tactic dice and deliver the indicated actions, and so on. Tactic die, a d6 rolled for each enemy action. 1, the enemy displaces, moves, or repositions. 2 to 5, the enemy uses its primary single target attack. 6, the enemy uses an area attack that hits many targets. Keeping with our skeletal knight example, the knight raises his shield and lunges away. On a 1, 2 to 5, the knight swings his decayed sword. 6, the knight slams his fist down, sending out a shockwave. Take some time to get accustomed to using this method. It will work both for and against the enemy, creating an emergent intelligence to monster actions. Like hex rolls, the tactic roll must be trusted completely by the GM. Why does this damn skeleton keep evading us? Or, the shockwave attack again? Brutal! Will be common responses as tactics are rolled. Since the GM isn't rolling attacks, this keeps their dice tumbling. As the GM using tactic dice, don't rely on these rolls to perform simple logical moves or actions for your enemies. All foes tend to move into attack range when the heroes are spotted, so don't gimp them or do nonsense actions. Rolling for answers. Before we dive into the adventure prompts, there is the matter of every other question that will arise in play. and they are myriad. How can the GM possibly be prepared to know every detail as play takes unexpected twists? Simple, they can't. Instead, you'll roll for answers. Yes/no questions. Simple rolls offer a robust way to answer questions of time, but what about all the millions of other questions? Is there a boat here? Do warp bats have beaks? Can this frost worm be harvested for a heat-soothing tincture? Do dwarves hate horses? When a yes/no question arises that you do not, there should be a no here. That you do not know the answer to, roll 1d6. 1, 2, 3, the answer is no. 4, 5, 6, the answer is yes. He who asks does the rolling. Trust the roll and run with the answer. Questions of direction. Where are the sounds coming from? Which direction is the wind blowing? Which way does the ship lean? Where is that bomb rolling off to? These directions all inquire about direction. You can use one of two methods here. One, use a d12 as a clock, with 12 being straight ahead of the roller. Two, use a super handy Warhammer-style scatter die, which shows arrows on its 6 faces. Trust the result. Play on. Questions of quantity. This one takes a bit more finesse by the GM. How many orcs are charging at us? How many wagons of bombs do the rebels have? Such questions can vastly affect difficulty. Anything from a D4 to 2D12 can be used. Scaling for challenge intended. Take care here, but trust your first instinct. Yes, it can be brutally difficult at times. Explanations. The questions above are straightforward, but what if a player asks, why are the elves leaving the redwoods? Or how are oaken golems created? If my answer is unknown here, I usually start with, wow, interesting question. Here, the GM faces one of the hardest skills to learn at the table. Absolute, bone-chilling, pants-down, running in the street transparency. This means admitting the answer is unknown, reasoning it out, and taking note. Well, we know elves have suffered after the war. I suppose they are seeking new lands to settle. Embrace transparency, and you'll be prepared for anything with your table mates at your side. I hope that you see, while you're seeing it written out here, this is a big, a different tact than what you read in many other RPGs. Can you have elaborate, plot arcs and everything has to go according to plan, and everything is a coordinated orchestra of events? Sure, I don't see why you couldn't. But the point here, and the system is built around you all living in an unknown and dangerous area, and you just may not know. And there is a lot of risk to that. There are high stakes in this regard. If you don't want to play by these rules, then don't. But this is a system that's trying to get you to let go of a lot of the contrivance. That's getting you to trust the roles. Hopefully something you've seen us do time and time and time again in this workshop. And look at all of the times it has absolutely worked out for us. So if you've already been here in our workshops, then seeing this written says, you know what? I haven't seen that really talked about before in books that I've read. It makes sense, and you know what? We prove it all the time here at the Hero Zone. This is crazy enough to work. Voivode, hello! Pardon. There is no more direct test of a GM's ability than quickly setting up and executing a 3-hour session of play. There is no universal way to solve this creativity challenge, but here are a few solid techniques. The establishing shot. Describe the landscape, the ominous vibes, and the hopeful rays of light. Make a ton of eye contact here. Zoom in on one area of the scene. Mention player characters as much as possible. Be brief and quick. If you must read, it's a buzzkill most times, be fast and punchy. Conclude this introduction with the dilemma, the struggle at hand. Do all this in under 5 minutes. Immediate conflict. After one round of each player introducing their character and their immediate concerns and details, grab the spotlight and bring the pain. Wolves attack, a fire breaks out, arrows fly from the forest. An alarm bell is rung, or marauders burst onto the scene. Get the dice rolling with a lightweight battle. Get the blood pumping. A trek. When the dust settles on the first conflict, our heroes embark on some kind of journey. Highlight specific moments of distinct mystery or drama, building up to the next scene with a montage approach. The action. After sufficient build-up, our heroes must face the primary evil or threat of the moment. This is your big action scene with environmental hazards, lots of enemies, an epic NPC one-liner, and no certain outcome. A wondrous reveal. Victorious or not, our heroes discover some larger truth after the main battle. The cave goes even deeper. The entire castle is built on a dimension gate. The vampires have already infiltrated the High Court. This reveal is the primary reward of their struggles. Epilogue. As players see new vistas of challenge and danger stretching out ahead, offer them a wrap-up that continues to press time. The orcs will invade soon, the crags are crumbling, or the fires are still raging. An epilogue doesn't mean time to rest so much as you did it. Now, there is an even greater task at hand. The more time you get at the table as both player and GM, the more tools and tricks you'll accrue to throw at players for maximum fun and danger. These are tried and true elements in a fun encounter that work every time. With practice, they can be plugged in on the fly to fit the theme. The blast, poorly acted NPC, the anime badass. Thank you to the authors for speaking in plain and very easy to understand terms. Don't stand in the goo. Battles that force players to move around a lot are best. Give the enemy or hazard the ability to cover the field in poisonous, corrosive, or incendiary effects. These pools of damage must be avoided, thus stirring the encounter and denying lazy placement or loitering. Lots of great stuff here to build. I gotta check and real quick. All right, there is more to come here before we get to actually, because we're talking about randomly generating in regions and some quests. We're almost towards the end of this portion, and then there's a whole section in the back, I believe, that get into the maps and stuff. So let's get up and take a break. Let's stretch. It's been about an hour. And Voivode, I'll give you a shout out. Thank you for coming over. Again, let's stretch. Let's do our thing, and we'll come back. And we might be at the end of reviewing the rules of this system, which means tomorrow we can play around with them. And we'll make our characters, and we can go on some interesting adventures together. So hold on tight, everyone. As you can see, we're past the vernal equinox, and we go from the chills of winter into the dawn of spring. Aw, how wonderful. I'll see you all soon.